Like the mythological creature of old, the fiery phoenix, personal flash paper has returned triumphant. Wait, what are you two doing here? You rapscallions have no business here. I was promised my time in the sun. Have you been drinking? Oh my god.
So, we're in America's Dairyland.
It's America's Dairyland up here.
So much cheese.
Cheese and cows.
There's so many spotted cows.
Oh, there's spotted cows everywhere.
Yeah, they just for miles and miles. Looks like a little Hobbiton.
Oh, there's little Hobbitons.
Yeah, just
we are in America's Dairyland up here.
That's right. We are in Waupaca,
Wisconsin. Home of the finest Blatz, by the way, in case anybody doesn't want to know.
Yeah, Blatz beer, established in Milwaukee in 1851.
I know, that's impressive, isn't it?
That is so impressive.
I mean, you'd think they would taste better by now if they had that much long to work on it. But,
well, they've been sitting in the basement for so long.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's not a beer you drink cold.
No. Heaven forbid.
No, God forbid you drink it cold.
Yeah, that's just
it's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
That's just blasphemous.
I mean, it's ridiculous. That's how bad it is.
Yeah. Speaking of bad, Blatz is bad.
To be fair, I am drinking them, and I have had a few. But
well, it's not like it's a spotted cow.
No, a spotted cow. Now that's a good drink, right?
That's a tasty drink.
Yeah, a spotted cow. All right, everybody. So this is Rob and Ryan. We are in Waupaca, Wisconsin. We made the trip up from Kansas City to this great state to enter into the Mission Critical narrative event hosted by Joe Rogers, otherwise known as the Raj.
The Raj.
We are going to have Raj on to do a little after-action report, but it is Sunday night. The hall is virtually empty. There is one game going on that is after the event. There's another couple of our Kansas guys. We are the only ones here, and we just thought we'd do a little recording and just kind of a little after-action report.
Yeah, just to talk about how awesome the event was and the fun that we had, so that if there's other people out there that want to join in this type of fun, they know how fun it actually is. So much fun. Surgical removal of the funny bone may be required.
Yeah. On that aspect, we had someone who listened to the podcast hear about Mission Critical and decide to make the trip. And that's pretty impressive, and it's even more impressive when you find out he's from Panama.
And not just Panama City like Panama City, Florida, but Panama City, Panama, the country.
And I don't know why, but I cannot get rid of this accent.
I know,
I cannot
so
break
fun.
myself from talking in this silly-ass voice. I'm sorry, everybody.
Sorry, but not sorry.
Yeah, sorry, not sorry. All right, so, and then that's, if you hear that in the background, that's the people playing there just trying to be a-holes. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this event. Joe Rogers puts on a narrative event. He used to do it at Waupaca, named after the city, and Wau from GW. We have come here for the last 2 years to play in the Infinity events. Next year, Waupaca in the January is not going to have Infinity, so that's where Raj started the Mission Critical piece. It's going to take over that spot of Waupaca.
Yep.
And then, so this was the inaugural. This is the first Mission Critical. It is a 5-game all-narrative.
And with the narrative, it was 8 teams of 4 people. Broken down.
6 teams.
6 teams.
You had room for 8.
Oh, that's right. So it was 6 teams of 4 people for a total of 24, broken down into very fancy colors.
Yeah. Everybody had a color. There was fancy blue.
Azure.
There was fancy red,
which was carmine.
Which was us.
That is us.
There was fancy violet, or fancy purple.
Fancy purple, violet.
Yeah. Fancy purple was the love child of fancy blue and fancy red.
Yeah, because we came together a lot.
Yeah. By the way, Raj does not publicly acknowledge the terms of the fancy teams.
No.
We attempted to overtake that, and he would not give in to our demands of fancy colors.
He would not succumb to the peer pressure and the awesomeness of people laughing at fancy red and fancy blue.
Yes. There was rust.
Yes.
There was
fancy orange.
Yeah. There was Flex, right?
Yeah, Flax.
Flax, which also tried to change their name to
Flex.
And then there was Pine.
Yes, fancy green.
Fancy green. So there were only, it started off with just a stand-up fight. Like, you just went in and kind of did a fight. It was everybody's first mission.
Well, there was also the Roanoke. There was the whole
Yeah.
storyline behind
Oh,
the
yeah, I
Roanoke.
guess we should probably go in.
Yeah.
So it is a narrative event, so there is an entire story that Raj has developed. There's a ship that has been through various aspects of life. To quickly summarize, it is now been refitted by the Raj Corp. By the way, Raj Corp, that's that. I mean, it's got some legs there.
Yeah,
Raj Corp.
yeah.
I mean, we should see lots of events. Corvus Belli, if you're listening, you should probably contact them. I mean, you think you've got like
there's
another
some serious sponsorship action
Yeah.
that can go on.
Raj
Talking
Corp.
like NASCAR race suits
Yeah.
with
Patches.
sponsored patches.
Yep.
Yeah, because everybody in Infinity loves patches.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Raj Corp is a great manufacturer of all things known and unknown.
Yes.
Yeah, there's
yes.
a lot of off books things in the Raj Corp.
Yep.
So-
Because Raj did admit that he was a bookie-esque
Yeah, that's
type
true.
person.
Yep. So basically, this vessel, the Roanoke, has had some incidents, and it is kind of spiraling out of orbit. Well, sort of.
It was hurtling
hurtling
towards
towards
Neoterra.
Neoterra. Right. And it has not done what is normally done when it gets to there to slow itself down. So it is
And there was-
hurtling straight to Neoterra to do
and there
some
was
damage.
no communication with the ship.
Yep.
When it missed its checkpoint, then the command, if you will, of O12 decided to send in special operations teams, which is where we get the first event of the Frontline-esque type stand-up game.
Yep. So we come in, and then there's basically just a stand-up fight, and so you and your opponent square off, and I don't think it was just basically dominating the 3 different zones,
Yep,
3
it
different
was
sectors.
very much like Frontline.
Correct. I lovingly chose my first opponent on purpose to head a fight up. I fought the mighty Tor Swanson. Tor and I have known each other for a couple of years now,
Yep.
and great guy. I really like hanging out with Tor.
Yep.
So known throughout the community as taking forever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just because he is very thorough and very...
No, it's because Thor likes to talk. Don't try to hide. Everybody knows.
I was going to try to sugarcoat it, make it very diplomatic.
Yeah. No, but I love hanging out with Tor. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I did not win.
No. In my first game, I was chosen. I was selected by Joel.
Because you're a pretty man.
I am a dead sexy MFer. But Joel Vaughn of the Remote Presence chose me.
Do they even record anymore?
I think they do because they had something about Iowa. But anyway.
Sorry, Joel.
Greg. Yeah. But it was one of those things where he's like, I just want a chill game. I was like, I can do that.
Yeah.
And then he proceeded to pummel me into a nice little pace.
Yeah, I played Joel before, and he's very meticulous. And man, I don't feel bad losing because I'm like, I'm
going to learn something.
Yeah, I'm going to set my models up, and then you're just going to tell me which ones to remove.
Yeah. I'm going to set these up, and you're going to knock them down, and we're going to have a really good conversation.
Yeah, it's really cool. Sean Poschel was here also from X Remote Presence now.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So this event overall was literally more geared to people playing a story and having a good time and playing fun games. It was not bring your beat stick list and just try to kill the opponent. It was not like you need to achieve these objectives because we didn't know what the end outcome was.
No. And to that, what was your record for the overall weekend?
I had a major loss, major victory, a tie, a major victory, and then a victory.
Okay, so you went 3-2?
3-1-1.
3-1-1. I also went 3-1-1. So I don't know what the other guys from Kansas did, but we didn't even get a chance to roll for prize support.
Well, that's because we didn't do something.
Well, yeah, there is that. But that's the whole point that I'm trying to make is that it's not an overly competitive scene. And
yeah, you can win all your games and not actually even come close to winning this tournament because it was about achieving certain objectives that you may or may not even know
about. Yeah, because it was all about the story, which is so amazing.
Yeah. So after your game 1, you had some sheets you turned into Raj, you did some stuff, added to the narrative piece, and then he gathered everybody and continued the next part of the story arc. Well, apparently, there has been some testing on some symbiomates.
And the symbiomates have morphed.
And they have, evolved and morphed. to where you then played on a table that had 4 camo tokens across the center.
Very much like supplies.
Correct. But you just had to discover them, and then when you discovered what it was, it revealed you picked a cup on the side. There was like 4 cups on the side of the table.
Yep.
You picked and revealed one, and then whatever was under there is what you revealed. Now, on my table, we had giant rats. Like everything was just rats, which means it was just noise. It wasn't actually something.
Right.
But in some people's tables, they'd reveal a cup, and it would be a symbiote.
Yep.
Symbio bomb model, but several of them had been altered by Raj, had different hands, had different things, and then all of them had their own little stat sheet that had like different stats. Some of them had mimetism, some of them had
Icol
level 2. Yeah, that's another.
Yeah, that's great.
Fancy blue. Anyway, the idea was your team needed to capture these, so you could kind of figure out what was going on, what testing was on. Like basically, you're just kind of gathering the research, right?
Yeah, it's all about intelligence gathering at this time.
Yep. If you revealed 3 just rats, then your mission objectives changed. It just became the stand-up fight like we just played in round 1 was your objectives. But if you didn't reveal 3 just rats, then your mission was this capture these bugs.
And in order to capture the bugs, you had to stun them. And Raj had changed the mission so that all of your models essentially had a stun stick.
Yeah.
And so you'd have to, 1, discover, flip over the cup, reveal what was underneath it, and then go into hand-to-hand combat and try to stun this thing.
Well, now, any stun ammunition, right? So
Yep.
if you had a multi-rifle, you could use your stun ammunition there. If it was you had exotic ammo, you could change it out. So essentially, you could turn a nano pulsar into a stun pulsar. Right? And then you had to stun it, and when you went into stun, it actually went into a neutral reset, which mean it just kind of shut itself off. And then you could go up and you could sync it, just like you would a civilian, right? No whip roll, just had to be in contact with it, and it became spin a short order, it's yours. And then at the end of the game, you get to keep those. Excuse me. There are lots of like weird little things, and we are glossing over a lot of this just because the depth it would take for us to explain the whole thing would be, an hour long itself.
Oh, yeah.
But so then at the end of the game, into the second game, it was revealed that you had. No, it was the first game we did bases, wasn't it?
No, it was the first game where it was a stand-up fight.
Yeah.
And then it was the second game where you'd either have to do a bug hunt or defend
Oh yeah, that's right.
or attack
That's right. I skipped that part.
do another bug hunt.
Yeah.
So out of the 5 games, there was
So after your first game,
Yes.
if one of your team members won on a table, you could choose that to be your base, and you had 6 terrain pieces you placed on your defending side. Now that was always your defending side.
Yes.
So when the roll off or table setup priority, you could either pick to go first or set up first, but the table side stayed the same.
Yep.
That comes relevant at later points. But then, so after that, on game 2 and on, so game 2, 3, and then 4 and 5 today, you did 2 bug hunts, which is what the symbiote thing was, and then 1 attacker and 1 defender. So you had to play an attacker and a defender at one point in one game, and then 2 bug hunts. So when you defended, basically what you were trying to do is keep your opponent from getting into your fort, basically, and destroying your
6
scenery
pieces of terrain.
Yeah.
Yep.
And each one of them did different things. They had different stats. Now your opponent got what's called the thumper, which is basically a
Modified mortar.
yeah. That is pretty powerful if you can forward observe stuff, which happened against me when I defended. But then if you were the attacker, you basically were doing the exact opposite. You were on a table attacking somebody else's base.
Yep.
Trying to destroy their pieces. Now, after the second game, so on to the third game, if you had captured one of the symbiote beasts or mates, you could take it to your base and hook it up to this digitizer thing. I forget what he called it.
It was essentially a cloning machine.
So it just made
So
a
that way-
digital copy.
Yep.
Meaning that you always had that copy of that one, so you had the information on that one.
Because all the symbiotes were different.
Yeah, and when you got a symbiote, and the next games, so all your team got together, pile all your symbiotes together, and then the next game, they all had to be deployed. You couldn't leave any off the table.
Nope.
Which means your opponent could take them from you, and then they would have them and you would not. So that's why if you copied them, they couldn't take a copy. You always had that copy.
Because
Right.
even in the future, they have the cloud.
Yeah. So when you made a copy, you had the original and then 2 copies of it. So you essentially had 3 versions of it. Now, you only ever needed one, so the other 2, either the original or one of the copies or both the copies or however you want to break it down, you could trade to another team to get all the other ones. They had stars. They were worth some points to the final objectives. Some they have different abilities. So you go to game 2 and 3 looking to try to capture those bugs, looking to try to protect your team was trying to capture bugs. 2 people were trying to capture bugs each game or each round. One person was attacking, one person was defending. So we did that for 2 games. After that day, we had lost on my game when I defended, because I was playing Pano, our engineer tried to heal one of our pieces of equipment. And
I like how you say our pieces.
Yeah.
Because I didn't lose any pieces when I was defending.
They're still our pieces.
They're still our pieces.
He tried to repair it, and apparently, being Pano, he did not realize that the D-charges don't go into that part, and he destroyed it himself. I claimed it as a moral victory because I didn't, that our teammate didn't kill it, or my opponent didn't kill it. I killed it.
If I can't have you, no one can.
Exactly.
Yeah, good job.
But then, so they had all of that being alive at the end of the whole tournament had some effects on a final piece. None of this information we really know at this point in the tournament.
Because we're still waiting for the after action from Raj.
Correct. But we get to the end of the night. So we've played 3 games. You've done 1 general game. You've had 2 attackers, 2 defenders, and 4 bug hunts total for our team. And then after dinner, there was a mandatory voluntary event. So why don't you talk about that?
So the mandatory voluntary event was essentially the bugs that you have collected to this point are going to be put into an underground fight club.
Well, some of the bugs. There are 2 tribes that have evolved.
Yes.
Of these symbio beasts and mates and stuff.
Yes, and so there was the Pig tribe.
Yep, and the Jub tribe.
And the only way that they would
and
settle their disputes was in this underground fight club.
Yeah, it was symbio mate fight club.
And so we squared off as Fancy Red Team against our nemesis now, Fancy Blue.
Yeah, so what it is, you could pick 3. You could only take 3 of the symbios you have taken. They could not be a Jub symbio or a Pick symbio. So we only had 3, and they were all domestomorphs, meaning they were all just pets.
Yep, so they were just like fancy cats.
Yep.
That don't ever go outside.
Now, Fancy Blue had 3 that they had, and they were not
No.
domestomorphs. You played 3 rounds.
They were cheetahmorphs.
Yeah. You played 3. No, they were skunkamorphs.
Skunkamorphs, yeah. That's
so
good.
we'll explain that in a second. So basically, what happens is there's a King of the Hill metal piece, and then 8 inches around it was your deployment zone, right? And you had 3 dudes. They each had irregular orders. You had 4 command tokens that could do things, and then they could also they had, like, you could throw rocks, you could do some other stuff with your mates. Basically, you're just having a fight for 3 rounds, and you scored at the end of the turns, or the end of your turn, my turn situation. You scored a point.
So whatever the sacred hill was, so if it was a stack of tires or an old sweaty locker or whatever, that's what the objective was for this underground fight club.
Yeah. So needless to say, we get into hand-to-hand combat, and it was actually called a slap. So you didn't really kill them, then you just slap them in the hand-to-hand. And they had 2 that had ICOL level 2.
And so ICOL level 2, if you haven't really experienced that, it's a -6 to your close combat.
Yeah. So our close combat of 8 is now a 2.
So a 10% chance of anything happening.
Needless to say, we did not win that the slap off.
Slap off, dance off.
Yeah, but it was really funny. I mean, it was just a lighthearted event. We played 1 game.
Yeah.
So it was just really kind of humorous.
Yeah, it was just something to kind of unwind after the day and talk about all the events that you had participated in, along with your fellow gamers that are all in the same event that you are and sharing the same, missions and stories that you are, and having a great time.
Yeah, and so then we go in, that ends, and everybody just kind of hang out. Some people played some games.
Yeah.
Some people hung out. We hung out and just
till 1:30, drinking the wonderful Blatz and
drinking
Japanese
some Blatz
whiskey.
And
Thank you,
Japanese
Sean
whiskey
Polsel.
by Sean Polsel. and just kind of hanging out. And that we were going to break out the equipment and record then, but everybody was just kind of like, yeah, let's just hang out. Let's just chat. And we're like, yep, that works. So that's why we did not record then. Come to Sunday, and we're in the same situation, right? So there's 2 games. We know the 3 missions: you bug hunt, attack, and defend. So everybody on your team has to be attacker, has to be a defender, and has to bug hunt twice.
Yep.
Now, bear in mind, between each round, Raj is advancing the storyline. The reason the games ended on Saturday night is because O12 had landed on the Roanoke vessel, so obviously we can't be attacking each other because O12 is there. Right, but Sunday morning comes up, and something has happened to the O12 thing, and they are not to be found.
Missing.
So the fight's back on.
Yep. And so in the meantime, as the O12 team has gone missing, there are communications that are garbled and broken that are alluding to a larger entity.
Yes, the larger entity.
Yes.
So Raj has set it up that we have more tables than we have pairs of people to play. But what happens is one half of the hall is all open at the beginning, and then at each round, additional tables become available, all progressing to the front of the hall, where there's a 4x6 infinity table set up. That infinity table doesn't open until the final round. The top 2 players fought on that table. There was a whole lot of other rules there.
A lot of storyline.
Yeah,
if you've seen that old movie Aliens, it's kind of along those storyline.
Yeah. It's really cool. Again, the idea behind it was like this is just something outside the norm. It adds to the storyline. There were some consoles on some tables. We didn't hack the console at any way, shape, or form, which is why we essentially didn't have a chance of winning because we got 0 rolls into the final deal. So we go in. The storyline progresses. It's the wrap-up time now, and then it's basically a whip-off.
Yep. And so Raj had decided how the distribution of dice rolls were going to be, and so I think Team Violet, the love child of Fancy Red and Fancy Blue, had 8 dice for their whip.
Fancy Purple. Yep. They rolled a crit.
Yep. And so that, I think, is how it was determined that they won.
So in your final round, each team had a private special objective. If a piece on your terrain had been, or a piece on your base had been destroyed, it was not private. It got told to everybody.
Yep.
But theirs was private because they still had it all the time.
Yep.
Right. Since they won the whip, that objective was theirs. Now, Luke, sorry about that, Luke, was on that table. He did the other piece of objective on that far front table. So basically, they got both of the main objectives, which meant they won.
Yeah.
Just hands down win.
And that team also correctly guessed how many symbiote mates that Raj had painted.
What was that, 111?
111
symbiote mates that he had painted. And not only painted, several of them were conversions.
Yep.
Some of them had wings. Some of them had guns. Some of them had spears.
Yep.
One of them had a little tentacle out of the back of his head.
And with that, I would really like to offer out a big shout-out to Corvus Belli for providing a lot of the support for the symbiote mates.
Well, so they allowed him to just purchase those individually. And he was like, I am willing to pay X for these. And they were like, okay, sure.
So, yeah, huge shout-out to that because, without the support of Corvus Belli for this, it would not have been as successful as...
Well, I don't think he would have done it.
I don't think he would have either. Because this event with those symbiote mates, when you're doing the bug hunt and you finally get to an actual discover, because instead of it just being camo markers, Raj had printed out Silhouette 2 3D printed things. And so you could actually see it. And when it reveals and you lift up that cup, the exhilaration of, oh, what does this guy do? And so, it's adding that extra flavor to the game.
It is. It's just another ladder side. And again, I mean, you're trying to win, but that's not necessarily your goal. I mean, it's not the overall thing. So Team Fancy Purple won. Then, let's see, Luke got Best Player, right?
Yep.
Bubbles got Best Painted.
Yep.
And then, everybody packed up and headed out. A few of us went out to dinner. And then we, the Kansas folks, are staying another night. Two of our people, Zach and Matt, are driving back tomorrow. Rob and I are driving to Chicago and flying
back
there. So we decided to stay. So we're just kind of in the hall hanging out. We decided to record a little bit of an after action. Matt and Zach are playing a game, so we're just kind of kicking it back.
Yep, because they're getting ready for Saturday's ITS in Kansas City.
That Rob is running.
Yep, and if you're in the Kansas City area, and by the time this comes out, you will have missed it. So if you do,
Probably.
so if you do come to the Kansas City event, I thank you in advance.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would like to talk about is like this style event, like a narrative event versus a high ITS.
Punch it in the mouth.
Yeah, like trying to win. It really scratches a different itch, right? Because although I'm trying to win, I'm more excited about the people that are here, the people I'm playing with. It's a lot of fun. It's literally like you're getting together with friends that you see once a year now, twice a year this year.
Yeah.
In some cases, I haven't seen somebody in over a year.
And for me, because I went to Adepticon, I've seen some of these guys now 3 times this year, which is a very rare event.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But it's just the love that's in this room, and that sounds so bad, but like that's what it is. Like everybody's just like, "Oh my God, how are you?"
Yeah, and it's one of those things where Joel and I during our first game, we talked about our pets.
Yeah.
I mean, we were showing each other videos of our animals, and it was almost reminiscent of. I'm throwing some air quotes up here because it's great radio, but it's normal people showing kids, they're flipping out their wallet and showing their kids and normal things, and it's just one of those things where it's like his Saint Bernard is so amazing. And just to set the record straight, I'm not really a dog guy. I like dogs, don't get me wrong.
I think that's a different podcast, Rob.
Yeah, it could be. But it's one of those things where, for me, I like my mutant cats, and Joel appreciates my mutant cats. And we talked about how, people with pets are, awesome. So.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And so Raj had some people to thank. Like I said, we are going to get Raj on here. But I would like to. Oh man, the work that Raj put on this, and the money that he invested in this, and the amount of terrain that he put together, and Raj and his wife and kid. I mean, there's some sacrifice there on the family there, and I think he was pretty pumped about it. I think he felt went pretty good. He seemed pretty excited. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to meet Raj or play one of his events, I highly recommend it because it's not a normal ITS game. Now, if you were just hyper competitive and just want to win, and that's
this is not going to be the event for you.
Yeah, this is probably not the podcast for you, to be honest.
That's true.
But if you just want to play a game because you're playing a game and that's your outlet, and you want a story and some for me, when I'm playing on a fully painted table and both my opponent and I have fully painted armies, I totally get lost in that cinema. Which will explain why we didn't have any dice in the final, because I took the horrible odds piece, because if it worked, it would be far more cinematic than the actual piece that would have allowed us to predict what happened and have a chance to win. But
yeah, and like in my last game, it was one of those things where I could have just, used my thumper, done spec fire for, the 8 orders that I've got out, and tried to have blown up a piece of, their final equipment. But it was one of those things where it was like, no, the person I'm playing is a more newer player, and it was one of those things where I'm like, nope, I'm just going to ignore the overall objectives, and I'm going to try, but I'm not going to focus on that alone.
Yeah, and talking about the newer players, there was a whole group that was fairly new. My final game, I think he said he had 6 games of Infinity before this event. Yeah,
my final game, actually my last 2 games today were both from people from the Madison area. Andy and Amanda, shout out to you guys. And it was just one of those things where they were very honest and upfront. They were like, I don't really know a lot of things. I was like, cool, let's work through some of the math. Let's work through some of the things. If you do this is what the outcome might be.
Yeah. And I think that's one of so John was who I played in my final group, and he was from that group, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madison area. Yeah.
I think so. Sorry if you weren't, John. But he and I chatted afterwards, and he was playing Vanilla Nomads, and then we kind of talked about some ideas and how some things worked. We talked a bit about fire teams, and breaking of the stuff, the bonuses they give, and so it was. I mean, it was just kind of cool. This whole event, I think, was far more about just kind of like hanging out and throwing some dice with some people, and for those of us that abide, drinking some beers, and then rolling into bed after one.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much normal. That's actually early for me for a Wapaka event.
For a Wapaka event. So, yeah. Well, let's take a break and see what we can wrestle up for a short musical interlude.
Yeah, that is one of the things that was my first feedback to Rob is our musical interludes are not going to be 5 minutes anymore.
Yeah,
so
that's my bad.
Sorry about that, people. All right, everybody, we're back. So as this is PFP and we are trying to help be a little more beginner-friendly podcast, we thought what we'd talk about is several things that happened this week. It has happened to me. It has happened to pretty much everybody that plays miniature games or dice rolling games.
Or any game that has a random chance.
It has been, as we have now dubbed it, the failing your gamer morale check.
Yep. So, when you fail your morale check, it's essentially when you've had a plan, you're not sticking to the plan, or the plan has gone horribly awry, where you haven't made a dice roll in a round. And what do? It's one of those things where you have now been presented a new problem.
And even not just making the dice roll, even if your opponent, may be of a different caliber than you, and you're just getting your ass handed to you.
Yeah.
Right? How do you...
How do you press through that when, it's maybe through no fault of your own, of your plan has gone to shit, your game is going to shit, you feel like there is nothing that you can do. Mm-hmm. And I honestly think that that's where it is a feeling. It's not a fact. Because in one of my games today, I was absolutely decimating my opponent. And it was just poor planning, poor deployment, poor something, dice rolls, and everything was going my way. And my opponent was just kind of like, you could see that, their morale was failing. Mm-hmm. And so, it went to their turn, they started over, and then they started to look at the board in a different way, and we started to talk through some of the things. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think that when we started to talk through the things, they were like, oh, I didn't know that you could do that. Oh, I didn't know that you could do that either. And so, again, to me, Infinity is one of those games where you're not only playing your opponent, but you're playing with your opponent. Mm-hmm. And so to talk about, failing morale, there's a lot of things that go wrong in this game. Your engineer just decides to put decharges in your own equipment and blow it.
To be fair, I also didn't. We bought the upgrade, so he was actually had a +3 to his whip roll. But the line that I didn't read was I could re-roll that if the command token. So I didn't catch that until the next day. So I caught it this morning. I'm like, oh, so I could have re-rolled that check, and so
that would have been great.
That's bad on me. I had the same thing with my game today. My first game today, I was the attacker, and my opponent was defending, and literally almost every other roll I made, I had a crit. I mean, it was gross to the point like I'd roll and I'd step back and I go, there's a crit.
Yeah.
And he was like, ugh. And so literally, he gave me a couple deployment things that weren't good for him that I was able to kind of pick off a person at a time. I was running a hospital night link with an HMG, so in my good range, not in cover. I mean, I'm hitting on a BS of 20.
Yeah.
So I mean, on 5 dice. So that night is that's just an uber powerful piece, right? And I was able to pick some things off. I was able to get a Black Friar on my first turn, back in to get a shot at Nauf, who has MSV1, and the Black Friar has albedo. So Nalf didn't get any of his bonus. He had to take a negative, and so I was able to just kind of pick some things apart. And then, but literally, he just was not. He had an Emily. He was playing Starkle. He had Emily in a 5-man link, and I have a 5-man heavy infantry link team, and she has a grenade launcher with regular and EM grenades,
which is going to mess your day up.
He should have owned me, and she didn't get. I think she was able to shoot one and didn't
stick the landing. Yeah, and it's one of those things where, to me, you have to think about your opponent as well when you're playing. And, yes, you can bring a total ugly beat stick and just be using that thing and beating your opponent like he owes you money. But it's also one of those things where if you are doing that and your opponent is of a higher caliber, then, lay that lumber on him. But if your opponent is not that type of, caliber, then do you press the attack? Do you keep beating it like it's a baby seal? Or do you back off a little bit? And I think this event is more for the backing off.
Well, no, sort of, right?
Sort
so
of,
it's
true.
If you're in ITS, you win by 5 points. You get the 3.
The 3 tournament points.
Tournament points, right? So that's really, you could back off. Unfortunately, in this event, as the attacker, I needed to keep pressing. I needed to go in and destroy his stuff. I needed to go in and take the symbiomates from him. So I actually had to keep
pressing that attack.
Because he and I chatted. And he goes, I would call this game if I didn't just need to delay you. And I was like, yeah, I totally get it, because I have to come at you because in this situation. But I could tell he was a better player than that game was allowing him, and it was literally a lot of dice. I mean,
dice happen.
I did set up some very advantageous things for me. My first turn, I did he deployed first, and I got to go first, so I was able to pick off some really key pieces and kind of put him on the back foot there. But literally everything I shot at died. For example, I had the Thumper, which again we said it was a
modified
mortar thing, right? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to spec fire. I'm going to spec fire over here onto Emily. They had a different template. So basically, it had the Silhouette 2 base was the size of its impact template.
Yeah, right at 25 millimeters.
So I put it on Emily and somebody else. And then I did the calculations. It's BS 10. And I'm like, okay, -6 for spec fire. And I'm -3 because of range. So, I need a 1. And I rolled a 1.
And crits happen.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you can do about a crit.
Yeah.
And, in one of my games, it was a very similar situation in that I was playing an opponent and he was running, a list that he firmly knew what was going on. And it was just one of those things where he would shoot some of my guys and I'd be like, okay, so doing the math, I need 14s or better on dice. Hey, look at that, 15, 16s. And it's one of those things where, you could see that numerous times of that happening, it's just like, son of a bitch, you should not be making those rolls, but you're making them, and it's putting me into a bad place.
Yeah.
And I could tell that his morale was breaking, and it's just one of those things where he's like, "That's it, I'm done."
Yeah. So, and I played a game at our local store with a guy who was a fairly new player, and he got to the point where I was gonna win. Well, not win. Let me check that. I was in a very advantageous situation going into my turn, and he was like, "You know what? I think we'll just call it." I'm like, "Well, let's walk through." So we broke down what the scenario was. So yes, I'm about to kill a whole bunch of your dudes, but we broke down the scenario stuff. I go, currently, you're winning this game for nothing, and so we were looking at it, and I was like, okay, so we continued to play. He ended up winning the game at the end. Because I couldn't achieve some certain things, like objective pieces, right? So he was ready to give up, but he didn't do because he was going to lose a bunch of people. A bunch of his stuff was dead. But he didn't look at that. It doesn't matter. You're playing Black Ops here. All your dudes could die. You just need to flip the switches.
It's all about the mission.
Win the objectives.
It's all about the mission. And in the previous segment, we talked about a gentleman that came up from the country of Panama, and
Edwin, by the way.
Edwin Perez.
I told him I was going to call him Panama all weekend, and I don't think I called him Panama once.
Way to go. Nice fail. Yeah. But Edwin and I, when we were playing, and it was a bug hunt mission, it was one of those things where I was like, I would start to deviate from my mission, and I'd be like, nope, Baker, just stay on task. I would use the military term Charlie Mike, which means continue mission. And he would look at me. He was like, "That is what one of our coaches back home always says: is stick to your plan." And it was one of those things where Edwin even admitted that he had gone off plan during our game, and it was costing him because he went off his plan, and it was one of those things where he's like, "Well, that's what I did."
Yeah.
And so, I think that some people have a morale value, for lack of a better term, that is based on the number of models that they lose. And, I look at it from the point, in some of my games, I will throw people. It's like I was throwing Van Zant in bad situations. Because
I think a lot of times people look at they're losing a bunch of models as they're losing.
True.
Right.
True. That's a good point. And, it's one of those things where if you are emotionally attached to a model that you have painted, as weird as this may sound, and maybe Jeremy Kinzer can talk about this on one of the episodes in the future.
The mental aspect.
The
behind
mental
that.
aspect of I've put so many hours of paint into this model, I don't want to lose it, and then when it dies, the emotional toll that takes, because it does take a toll on you, and it's one of those things where it's like, whoop, I've got to recover and regroup and march on. So
yeah, well, so I think that what we're really striving to look at and talk about here is, if you're in that situation, like if your mental will is breaking, right? Remember two things. One, this is a game. It's not your real life. It's not going to have an effect on who you are as a person. It's a game.
There is no scholarship tied to this.
And two, games are played for fun. If it's not fun for you, because you're losing,
or appear to be losing.
Yeah, or appear to be losing.
Perceive.
I mean, you need to think about that. Think about, okay, remember, I'm still playing game. I'm not working. I don't have a boss breathing down my neck. I don't have a bunch of chores to do. I'm still going to roll some dice. So then, at that point, typically in me, I try to find other cinematic things. It's hard. You're going to get a little depressed and be a little defeated.
Oh, yeah, because everybody wants to win.
Yeah, at Walpaca this year on the main event, I scored, and I played the first two games. I scored 0 points. I literally had no victory points whatsoever. We had an odd man, so I got to buy the final run. So in the victory, if you look at the ISTS, I think I scored 2 points, and that's because I had the buy in the final game.
Yeah, for this year's Walpaca, you did not.
Yeah, it was horrible. Now Sunday was another story.
Super Sunday.
Sunday, I was. Dude, I was killing everything.
Yeah, crushing things.
You don't want to come in. You don't come here. I will kill you.
Yeah. You look at me wrong. I'm killing your dog.
Yeah.
So, and this year, I honestly think with Mission Critical, we are exploring a different faction or a different facet of the overall game of Infinity. Because it's, to me, the history of miniature wargaming is I punch you in the mouth, you punch me in the mouth, we rinse and repeat until we got last person standing. That's not the case with this game.
Yeah, well, I think with most narrative type events, it's not the case. The overall idea is you're going to try to progress a story, you're going to try to have fun, and I think that's the biggest piece, is try to have fun. Again, I'm going to stress that multiple times, because it's supposed to be fun. Now, I will say that back in the Warhammer Fantasy Battles days, I played a guy, his dwarves against my ogres, and he was not rolling well, and I destroyed him. It was gross. It was, and to the point that he was like, I quit. I'm just out. And this was round 1, maybe. Yeah, round 1 of the tournament, and I just rolled over him. Now he should have done a lot better, but his dice, right?
Dice are a thing.
And so he told the TO, I'm gonna bow out. I'm gonna leave. And the TO told him, he was like, okay, that's fine, but if you do, please do not sign up for another one of my events.
Yep. Because when you do that, you are essentially screwing over anyone that was going to be slotted to play you. And when you think about it, you look at us.
Well, not only that, you're screwing over the TO.
Yeah,
right?
You're screwing over a whole lot of people.
You're actually skewing the numbers.
Yep.
You're also, if it's a traveling tournament, for instance here.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going.
So on the Saturday event, I had to buy my final game. Oh, great. I spent a couple $100 to fly here.
Yep.
Right. It was fine because it was Walpaca and there's people I can hang out and chat with.
Right.
But it was a game I didn't get to play. Not because of anything I did, because somebody else decided, I can't be bothered because I'm not winning. Now, I was in another Facebook group. I am no longer really chat with that Facebook group because they were talking about that, and they were like, and I told them, I was like, if I sign up an event and you play a game or two and then tell me you're out, I'm going to ask you not to sign up for another one of my events. And I got reamed for that, about how that's not fair for me. And, it may not be, but there's a lot of things that's not fair. Because, again, I'm here to have fun. I'm trying to play games and hang out and do that stuff. And they were like, but if I'm at a convention and I could, okay, so I'm going to play, you're going to make me play for another 2 hours and I'm going to be in a bad mood, or I can go do something else for another 2 hours and next see another game, or if it's like Gen Con or Adepticon, go do something else and look at the vendor hall. I'm like, yeah, I get it, but you're screwing multiple people.
Yeah, you're screwing people. When I look at it from the point of the TO, as someone who has run an event, the amount of work that goes into running an event is so enormous that when you screw that person over, to me, they have every right to ban you from any future events. If you're going to drop from their event, don't even bother.
Yeah, and bear in mind, remember, we were talking about just because you're losing, you're like, I don't want to play. I'm going to take my ball and go home. If you get a phone call from your significant other and says, "Hey, I've been in a car wreck," yeah,
you got to go.
Fine,
Yeah.
That is not what we're talking about.
Well, and that actually goes back to, this is not work. Mm-hmm. This is a game, and you're here to have fun.
Yeah.
And events like this and events that have a random element are going to be fraught with shit. This plan's going to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, and so to kind of pull us back a little bit more on track. So what I do, if I start finding myself, I'm like, well, I know I'm not going to win, so I'm going to start looking for the cinematic pieces. Oh, like, okay, so what can this dude do that is really not like the best case scenario? Like, really, I'm like, I should not be doing this, but I'm not going to win this. So I'm going to just try to do something that's outside normal. So in my final game today, I was winning. I was doing pretty good. There was a console we needed to hack, right? And we needed to keep track of how many times we actually made this whip roll. I had a Forward Observer Order Sergeant, TO Camo Order Sergeant, in base-to-base contact with it. He'd failed once before. But I also had another Forward Observer Order Sergeant in the building with one of the undiscovered camo tokens, right? So I did screw this rule up, so I will tell that right now. So don't email me saying, oh, you can't do that. But I acknowledged it as soon as somebody brought it up and started saying it. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. I can't do that. So I went to discover and shoot this thing with my flash pulse.
That sounds legal.
Because I needed to stun it. That's fine.
Yep.
I failed to discover. So I'm like, damn it. So I burned another order to do it again. And I burned 6 orders to do it.
Shit.
So when you go to discover something and you fail, you can't do it again. That model cannot try to discover that camo token again.
Oh, that's right.
So I really shouldn't have burnt those 6 orders, right? So I'm like, whoops. But anyways, I didn't think about it. I did as soon as I was pointed out. I'm like, as soon as he was like halfway through the sentence, I was like, oh God, you're right. I totally spaced that. But anyways, that's the heat of the moment. It didn't really change. Well, that probably would have changed some stuff. But what I got down to was I had 2 orders left. I finally revealed the Symbiomorph, right? And I got ready to stun it. So I discovered, shot it with a flash pulse. And he got ready to take the flash pulse roll. And so I've got, okay, flash pulse, damage 13. And I look at his BTS, and it's 12.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. It was a metalmorph.
Metalmorph?
Yeah. It was worth 5 points.
Oh, that's the one you came over and showed me.
Yeah,
oh,
it was
Lord.
nice.
Yeah, that was sweet.
He also had his CC's weapon was monofilament, so I was not going to get into combat with him because I'm not risking that. But
wow.
But anyway, so I was then like, okay, so my opponent rolls, and he obviously does not roll a 1. So it's not stunned. So I can't sync with it until it's stunned. So I have to get it to fail a BTS roll. So I have 2 orders left, and I'm like, okay. So I can either try to crit, so there's a 5% chance.
Yep.
Or succeed and then have you, my opponent, roll a 1. 5% chance. Right? On 2 different rolls. So very, very low. Or I go over the console with my other 2 orders and take the whip roll, which is a 13, I think, on the order sergeant right off the head. Or
not a 5%.
Yeah, not a 5%. Now, he and I were chatting, and he was like, why'd you do? You got to do the console. I mean, that's the thing. And I'm like, yeah, strategically and wanting to win, the console is my safer better.
But this Symbiomorph.
But cinematically and more humorously, the Symbiomorph is a cooler idea. So he was like, well, you could do 1 dice, and if you make it, because I couldn't sync it if I failed the first one because I was too far away.
Oh, yeah.
So I wouldn't. So I was like, all right, we'll try it. So I needed a 10 because it. I also had mimetism. I didn't tell that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I rolled a 9. I'm like, okay, well, I hit, and then he rolls like a 15, whatever. So it doesn't do anything. So I was like, okay, well, my last order, I'll go to hack the console, and I rolled like a 16.
Oh.
So I didn't do that either. Now, my other teammate, who was also bug hunting, did not hack the console at all either. Well, in order to be in the final whip roll-off thing, you had to hack the console, and neither one of us did. So our team was not even in the option to get our special mission to go off. We didn't even have the chance. We didn't roll any dice. FYI, we were the only team that did not roll any dice.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
And-
it was. It really was.
And, to kind of bring us back from my point of view of the, how do you pass your morale check? I look at it from the point of view of I'm playing an opponent who has also traveled to this tournament. And to me, it is my job to make sure that I am giving that person a puzzle. And so if I can put them into an awkward situation where they are having to think or make the lesser of two evil type choices, I'm doing my part to make sure that they're having a good time. Because to me, this is about a community. And the community of Infinity is so outstanding. A couple of the people that I talk to that are newer players that are coming from a War Hordes background are like, this community is so different.
That's totally.
And so to me, it's one of those things where I want to make sure that I am a good diplomat of the game so that that type of community progresses.
Yeah, I mean, it is really cool. I will have to say that I have been to several Infinity tournaments and never felt the same when you were in the upper tables, the same stress and pressure level as when I was playing fantasy.
No, that's true
Right?
point.
It was weird because, I mean, we had a good buddy of ours who actually ended up winning a tournament, and he went to shake his opponent's hand before their game started, and the opponent's hand, he was all sweaty and clammy, and everything he did, the guy questioned. Like, every rule they questioned. To the point that he was like, just went over to the team and was like, hey, can you just stand by the table? Because he's questioning everything. Our buddy won. He did win it, so he did win the tournament. But the other, he just knew going into it, he was like, oh, this is not going to be fun. This is going to be a hard 2 hours. Now, when you're on the upper tables, yes, they're going to be a little harder.
And in all honesty, they should be a little harder. They should be a little bit more intense. But at the same time, if you're getting to that upper table, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what the score is. You should know how your force is going to act. And you should be able to enact your plan and stick to your plan.
Yeah. Yeah, but so, what we were like, when you get to that point where you're just not going to win and you're feeling kind of sour, just try to do something. Like, try to maybe use something you haven't used before in that situation. So maybe if you have somebody that has, I don't know, drop bears or something, try to get in a situation where you can utilize those so you can figure out how those work. Or, again, like Rob says, set something up for your opponent so he has got a puzzle to solve. Even if it's going to mean he's to win, you're just going to try to utilize some pieces a little differently, or give yourself a specific goal. Like, I knew coming into this, right? I'm not the most hyper-competitive player. I'm not a horrible player, especially if my head's completely in the game.
And sober.
Yeah. So on normal tournament weekdays, I'm more competitive than Paka. But I took a 5-man Hospital Link team with an HMG, and I was like, I want to roll. So I have a natural 20 on 5 dice. I was like, I just want that set up so there's no negatives, and I got all my positives. And it happened in multiple games.
Yeah.
And so it was really kind of funny. I mean, it is, because you're just like, yeah, I can't miss this, so I'm just going to roll dice and just have to beat your dice.
Yep. So for me, when I was playing Joel, one of the things during the conversation of the game, it came up that I hadn't been playing very much, and so it was really nice for Joel to walk me through, in this situation, don't forget about this, and in this situation, don't forget about this, and kind of coach me through it. And for me, I was very appreciative of that. And so going back to the whole thing of your gamer morale, it's your opponent also will be able to help you fortify your morale check.
Yeah, and another thing that I really like, not only about just this event, like a Wapaka, which Wapaka, the original Wapaka in January is 100% painted. Everything has to be painted.
Yep.
3 colors and based is fine, but it has to have paint on it. Raj carried that rule over here for Mission Critical, and let me tell you, there are some really pretty armies.
Pretty.
Oh, dear Lord.
Bubbles and Chris Braska.
Yeah, Braska's cream on his and his display board. It's so good. Yeah, I said it. That's that tip sword, everybody.
Tip sword.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, that's what she said. Jokes. We don't. Rob and I have those at work, but we can't say that's what she said, or anything like that. Or Twist is the other one.
Twist.
So we actually took it from, and we refer to it as Tip Sword. Shout out to Scott Tip Sword.
Yep. One of the workhorses in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah,
So if
we
you're
had lunch. We had lunch with him on our way up here. We flew in and then met him for lunch.
Yeah, it had a 2-liter boot.
Yeah, had a boot for lunch and then drove another 3 hours. I mean, it was a brilliant plan.
Yeah.
Granted, I was driving. I did not have as much of the 2-liter as much as the boot
as I and Scott did. But,
but it was a lot of fun. But I totally forgot where I was going.
So we were talking about painting and packing.
Yeah, and so it was like,
and we're still drinking, so it's okay.
That's true. It's just drink time. But Bubbles is. I mean, he is a phenomenal painter.
Yeah.
Broska's a phenomenal painter. I like my stuff.
I like my stuff.
Rob's. If you haven't seen Rob's Blackjacks, they are phenomenal. They're really
Thanks,
good. But I mean, everybody's stuff has paint on them, and there's some really good. I mean, just some really solid painters. And again, you put those on fully painted tables, which every table here was fully painted.
Yep.
Some of them more themed than others. Some of them were just kind of ramshackle stuff. There was one foresty table that I think people played on the first round, and nobody ever played on it again. It was like really flat and open.
And then there was Sean Poshel's Gundam table, which was amazing.
So cool.
I never got a chance to play on it, but
I did not either. And it's a hexagon mill, or mostly hexagon mill. So Dexter, you need to produce hexagon mill again.
Just saying.
And then he had these 3 Gundam robots that set up, right?
And
then they had
some of them
on
had lights, yeah.
And then there was another table that had a screen on it that Bubbles had put together.
I wondered about that.
You pushed the buttons and it played videos. It was like a billboard that played actual movie clip videos. It was so cool.
Yeah.
It's so the things like that are just really cool.
Yeah, totally immersive.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we want to try to achieve here on this podcast, on the YouTube channel.
I'm gonna have to edit that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna have to edit that burp there. Sorry about that, folks. Is that we really want to do we're gonna do some videos on, how to do some terrain. And I picked up a couple tips from Broska here.
Oh, really?
Try him. Yeah, I'm gonna try him out. I told him I'm gonna reach out to him. Like, hey, I'm gonna send you some questions.
Oh, gotcha.
And it was funny because as he and I talked, we were like, he just saying something. It's like, yeah, I'd totally do that too. We're like, yep, nope, and we're like, oh, yep.
So you didn't even have the conversation. It was just the hive mind clicks and whistles.
Yeah, there was like, that's what, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple pieces like that, but we want to try to establish so everybody, it doesn't matter your level of painting, we're going to give you like some simple tricks and tips so you can actually up your game a little bit more. And then as you practice, because again, it's practice, right? You've got to practice playing your game to do better. You're going to have to practice painting and hobbying to do better. It's just going to take time. No one's stuff starts off beautiful, so it doesn't matter how bad you think it is. Don't compare it to other people. Compare Model 1 to Model 2 to Model 3 to Model 4, and every time you do it, you're going to get better.
Yeah. So on that, Ryan, do you still have the first model that you painted?
I don't know. I have the first model I painted because I'm not sure which one that actually would be. It would have probably been maybe not the first model, but the first model I don't have because it would have been a Space Wolf that I don't think I have anymore.
Okay.
But at that time, Necromunda, the original Necromunda, came out, and I had painted a Delac Gang, and I still have that.
Okay. And the reason I wonder about that is because I still have the very first Wood Elf, and it was a Sylvan Marauder miniature. And I still have that in a dice case. So I think it's important to remember where you start and see that, slow glacial movement of progression. so that when you look at something, because I did not start out with, an artistic type background. It has just been a slog for me.
Yeah,
and so
and I did, right? So
Right.
I'll tell you what. After we get this up, I will post some of those deluxe up, right? So you can see where I started in painting.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is I think it would be really nice to see your first model, my first model, and see where we started to where we are now. And, that is the progression that I would like to see this podcast help other people achieve.
Yep, I'd agree. I think I think people. I think people coming into this, especially when they come to an event like this, you see some of these models at a level that are just
Phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal. And you see Angel's models, right, that he paints for the company. You're just like, son of a bitch, I can't. And then you feel defeated, right? So this goes against it's the same thing, same game and we're out, right? So it's really just keep slogging away, just keep putting paint on the brush.
Yep, just slinging that paint.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that in the next episode of, the official, throwing some air quotes around the official, personal flash paper podcast, I'm going to break out a hobby streak type idea.
Yeah, we have a local painting group, Facebook group, and they started this hobby streak thing. So I think we should officially. Thanks, Zach. So we have a local hobby streak that we started off. Rob is going to make an official PFP hobby streak. So we'll get into those details when we get to our next official cast, which should be around the 1st of June.
Yeah.
The next release.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, the whole idea is just to get you motivated to do something hobby related. And, like I said, there's going to be a little bit more details with that. And, I think it's going to be a really good event for the community, and it's going to be a really good event for the individuals.
Yep. So with that, I think we've really covered a lot of Mission Critical. I think
we have.
we'll try to get Raj on and just chat with him. We'll do a little after-action report, just kind of get his thoughts from his side of what goes into it, because this is a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work to put in.
And it's a labor of love.
Yeah. I mean, you really have to want to put on an event, and not just put on an event. You really want to have to put the time into establishing a story, writing scenarios, figuring out, hey,
how is this going to work with
progress,
other,
right?
and how's it going to work with all the factions? I mean, because how is Toha going to do in this event? How is Morat's going to do in this event?
Were there any Toha? I don't think anybody brought Toha, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, one of the rules of this is, Toha could not bring anything symbio beasts, symbio mates, symbio bugs, symbio bombs. They couldn't bring them because the threat of contamination was too high. Now, they did have a little bit of an advantage on the bug hunt piece, but nobody found them apparently viable to take without those, which I don't know what that says about the symbio mates. Does it say they're too powerful? If nobody's like, I can't take them, I'm out. I'm not taking them.
To be fair, John Withune was contractually obligated not to come to this weekend. He was busy.
Clarify, he was not contractually obligated not to come to this thing. He was contractually obligated with his other work that he was not able to come.
Yeah, he was not able to come to this event, and John's a huge Toha fan.
Yeah, it'd been funny.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we should probably, kind of wrap this up, and then, again, the next PFP, we may do an extra burst with Raj, depending on his schedule, and put that out to 2. And just kind of continue going along this line. We do now, as you can tell, have the set of the mobile equipment.
Thanks, Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. So we will try to do some of this stuff at more events as we get a little better at these things, because I had not set it up before, so that's why I broke it out, because I was like, I'm going to see how all this sets up and make sure it runs on my computer. And I'm not an idiot and figure out how everything plugs and all the bells and whistles and dial turning.
And hopefully this is recorded, and we'll be able to get it out.
I mean, it looks like it's recording, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, we did run a few tests, and, there was some, off-putting jokes and chuckleheads in the background, so I think we're good.
Yeah, it'll be fine. All right, so, again, thanks for giving us, your ear for an hour or so. We actually really do appreciate it. I know it's kind of funny to think that, we're putting this out there. Maybe people will listen to it, and then as we get excited, we're like, oh my God, we've had 100 downloads. Oh my God, we've had 150 downloads. And it's just kind of so funny.
So if you've got any feedback, let us know.
Yeah.
And the Facebook group is alive and well and active, so if you want to join, we'll add you. It's a closed group.
Yeah.
and you can totally, reach out to any of us.
Yeah, we're open to feedback. Now, obviously, depending on the nature of the feedback, we may or may not listen to it, and depending on who you are. So if a Tor gives me feedback, I'm not listening to it.
I'll listen to you, Tor. Don't worry about that.
Whatever. Screw that fancy blue guy.
Fancy blues.
And that damn Yan.
Ninjas.
Yeah.
Ninjas are everywhere.
Oh, yeah. No, that's Luke.
That's Luke.
Luke and his ninjas. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Luke is a really good player to the point he would go pick a table and everyone would scatter.
Just avoid it.
Nobody's like, nope, I'm not picking that table. No, I'm not
Nope,
going there.
not going there.
So, all right. So again, thanks for being here, Rob. Thanks for taking the time.
Ryan, thanks for setting everything up, man. This is great.
Yeah, everybody. We will chat with you later.
Well, it appears that was nothing more than just a drunken festival of hooligans. Anyway, time for the computer to tell you what songs you heard in that single interlude. I shall return.
Intro/background music. Flying species. The yellow flying cog. The use of these human works of music is granted under the current Creative Commons license terms and agreements. From the freemusicarchive.org from the artists as listed.